You are experiencing the Knuckleheads of Liberty podcast.
It is June 4th, 2025, and welcome to the Knuckleheads of Liberty, where we're bringing you the people and the organizations fighting for liberty around the country and in your region. And today we have our special guest with us is Adrian Malagon. He is the chair of the California Libertarian Party, and he is also recently elected as an at-large for the National Libertarian Party. So, we're going to hear a little bit about Libertarian Party business, and we're also going to talk about some California-related news, since this is sort of a California-related show. And we're going to talk about those refineries that are on their way out of California and sort of the mismanagement of government that's led to that. We're also going to talk about some crazy stuff with parking tickets and progressive fines. And finally, we're going to hit that Knucklehead Noise Patrol we didn't get to last week for you, which has to do with the kids' vaccines and some of the news around that. But before we do, I'm going to introduce you to our panel. In our upper right-hand corner, we have Leon, the word Brathwaite, last word in Liberty. He is a retired engineer in the state of California. In our lower left-hand corner, we have our screaming eagle of freedom, Tim Everett. He is a pilot in the state of California. In our lower right-hand corner, we have our guest, Adrian Malagon, and my name is Jason McPhee, and I'll be your host today. So we always start off jumping into a Liberty quote just to get us in the right frame of mind. And I thought this one kind of touches the right chord with the way California is going. And so I'm going to bring up that quote, and let's see. And here it is. This is Margaret Thatcher. First time we're using her for a quote on the show. And I really like this quote. It says, "When the state does everything for you, it will soon take everything from you." And it says, "You will then have no basis for personal freedom, political freedom, or economic freedom." And of course, she was the prime minister of Great Britain from 1979 to 1990. And she was also, I guess, affectionately known as the Iron Lady. So I just think this is a great quote, and it says everything about California. I mean, we just keep seeing the taxes go up. They keep taking more and more from us because they keep telling us they want to do more and more for us. So what do you guys think about this one?
Adrian, you can go, please.
Well, I mean, we're just so lucky that we have such a benevolent government that is just willing to just take it upon themselves to do so much for us. And, personal freedom, political freedom, economic freedom, be damned, they're there for us, right? No, but I mean, in all seriousness, it describes California perfectly well. It seems that whoever's in office, I mean, right now it's Gavin Newsom, but before then it was Jerry Brown. Before then it wouldn't have been Gray Davis. Was it Gray Davis before then, or am I missing one? Well,
Arnold. Gray out Davis right before. Yeah,
Arnold Davis. How can I forget the great governor? But it doesn't really matter who it is. I mean, here in California, it is the kind of it's the ultimate uniparty. It doesn't matter who's in office, really. They both have to placate, the liberal base, so to speak. And when they're all fighting to see who can tax higher or who can regulate more, the only ones that seem to lose are the people that live here. I mean, we do. So when they're playing this game, we're really the only losers here, and it's really a shame. But we've experienced this. I'm a lifelong Californian, and I've seen this since I was a kid, all the way till now, and we'll see how much longer I see it. It's not sustainable.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, too. I just wanted to jump in real quick with something. You said you went to Gray Davis, and I just wanted to touch on this because of where the show is going. Didn't even make that connection. But when we had Gray Davis, we were having rolling blackouts on energy. Yeah. And what's about to happen now under Gavin Newsom, we're about to run out of gasoline, which we'll talk about more later in the show. So I mean, this is, seems to be a theme with Democrats. But go ahead, you guys. Give your comments too here.
No, that's true. And if I remember correctly, wasn't Gray Davis, when he was pushed on this, if memory serves, I was really young, but he said, no, they're not blackouts, they're brownouts.
Yeah.
So it's because right? That was his big quote, right? It's not that we've completely lost energy. It's that it kind of goes away, but it comes back. It's fine. I know it's slightly inconvenient, but it's okay, guys. I've got it. And I can't believe that was his defense. I mean, it's not like, it reminds me of the old Simpsons, what was it, a Sideshow Bob quote when he gets tried for attempted murder. And he says, well, attempted murder, what is that really? I didn't succeed. Why are we here? And he's just, he can't believe it. And that's kind of what it reminded me of. But that's how they always act. It's, it's not really as bad as you guys are making it out to be. It's fine. Everything is fine.
Yeah.
This Margaret Thatcher quote, I think speaks directly to the evils of socialism. She had another famous quote where she said that socialism is always bad, or something along those lines, because you always run out of other people's money. And with this thing here, where the state thinks that they can do everything for you, but in order for them to even attempt to do that, they must take away money from someone else. And the someone else is always the most productive parts of society. So what they do in one single act, they take away from the most productive and they try to give to the least productive. And in one act, they destroy both ends of our class system, in the sense that the productive class becomes less productive and the underclass, or the people who they're trying to help, becomes more dependent. And it's the evil of socialism that is being represented in this quote by Margaret Thatcher.
And it's really hard to say that it's not by design. I mean, at this point, I think it's very clear. I think sometimes you do have the quote unquote useful idiot politicians that don't really understand everything. And I think that there is, Tom Woods talks about this. There's a little bit of give and take. He says, as he's infamously said, when he's asked, do you think that these people are really just that stupid, or are they evil? And he just says, yes. Right? Because it really is. And you don't know on any given day. I do think that there are some people that are pulling the strings, and I think we've seen that, the higher ups, the deep state, whatever you want to call them, and then they kind of filter their agenda and their orders to the useful idiots. You know, not your average congressman, or here in California, your average assemblyman or state senator doesn't know what's going on, but they got their marching orders and they're going to follow through with them. And you know, whether you want to call that evil, whether you want to call that just incompetence, or you know, just general mismanagement, whatever it is. I mean, Leon did hit on something important. It's always funny to me when I recommend that people read Murray Rothbard's Anatomy of the State. As an anarcho-capitalist, I always promote that book. It's a short pamphlet for anyone that hasn't read it. I think it's 60 pages, give or take, if even that. And he just talks about what the state is and what it isn't. And one of the things that he touches on was Leon's point, is that the state owns nothing. They don't. Everything that the state owns is taken from someone else's means of production. It's from someone else's value, from someone else's wealth, whatever you want to call it, and whatever it is. But they don't own anything. They just take, and that's what they're really good at. They're taking, and they take it by force, because none of you would ever give your money to the state willingly. I mean, what has it gotten us?
Yeah, you're both
especially in California.
Yeah, you're both talking to the basis of the quote, which is that there's more people that are not productive that can vote. So they've got a higher voting block, and they happen to vote more benefits from government largesse, and so that's the slippery slope that happens to go eventually into socialism or socialistic style of operation of the government. So. Yeah, it's a slippery slope, and unless there's some kind of safeguards built into the basics of the government, which I don't know what those might be, but it's just seems to have a tendency to go that way.
And that's one of the things.
You know this whole thing, though. You know, Tim, I accept everything that you have just said, but the expression you use, government largesse, it is not government largesse. It is our money, taxpayers' largesse. And people get this concept in their head. It's a government money. Oh, they're getting government money, government this and government that. It gets back to what Adrian just said. The government owns nothing. We do.
Yeah,
we do.
Exactly. When I mean by largesse is they're largely taking a large amount of your income.
Okay.
Well, and you hit on something really poignant, Tim, that people forget. I mean, I was a philosophy major in college. I'm very familiar with logic and fallacies and all that. The fallacy of the slippery slope is probably the most underrated fallacy. It's not so much a fallacy as a reality. I mean, there are extreme examples, but the slippery slope fallacy is very, very much real. I mean, we see it. I mean, let's take income tax, for instance, right? What was it supposed to be? Just just the Carnegies, just the Vanderbilts, just the Rockefellers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's never going to affect the regular. You people don't make enough. It's going to be fine. It's to help us, right? It's to help us normal people. And then it didn't take very long for it to become a standardized thing. And, and now, I mean, we'll never know. And I'm sure that people, I mean, we'll never really know because history does, the victors write history, so to speak, right? So we'll never know. But I have to imagine that people pushed back on this pretty fervently then. But now that it's become the norm and all those people are gone, you can't resist, something that you never knew about. So now that the past has been erased, so to speak, and it's become the norm, that's why people don't fight it. It's normal, right? Normal for us to pay income tax. It's normal for us to pay sales tax. It's normal for us to only get a small percentage of our money or have to pay it in, whatever which way that, I know we're going to talk about gas later, but the gas tax and, to fix the roads, because otherwise who would build them if not the government? They're so efficient. And it goes all to these arguments, and it's the government. I mean, to go back to the Margaret Thatcher quote, it's really important that the government do this as efficiently as possible. It's probably the only thing that they can do efficiently is erase the past to a certain extent and make something that was not the norm before the new normal, right? And we heard that term a lot during COVID. You have to make it the norm, because those that remember what the past was like will put up the biggest fight. And there will be a time where there will be the babies that were born as a result of COVID, ironically enough, right? That never understood that will read about it later. And should another, heaven forbid, should another government oppression of that magnitude ever take place, or a huge transfer of wealth happen again, they may consider it the normal. Well, it happened before. It's okay. And they didn't know what the before times were like. I still see it's always funny to me to see. One of my best friend's little brothers lives with me. He's in his early 20s. I think he was born late 90s, but he never went on a plane before 9/11. He didn't know that. I mean, you see all these old sitcoms where they ran to the gate, right? And you see your wife, your boyfriend, your husband, whatever, that was a normal thing. And now you look at that as remember when you could do those things? And now we know that we have to go to the airport 3 hours early because we're going to get assaulted and molested by TSA because someone had this much liquid in their water bottle, right? And heaven forbid. And now that's the new normal. And this is what the government does the most efficiently, is to remind us or make us forget about what actually is normal and institute a new normal, whether it's economically, politically, anything that really strips us of our freedom. And it's really sad, but that is just the reality that we live in.
Are you saying that taxes new normal will be you pay income tax, sales tax, excise tax,
property tax?
Yeah, that tax and tariffs too.
Exactly. We're already seeing it in some capacity with, taking tariffs aside, that could very well be the new normal. Tipping has gone just completely insane, right? It used to be normal to tip someone for exceptional service. They got paid what they got paid for their job. And then if they went above and beyond because they recommended specials, they were attentive when they brought you their water. Now you go to Subway. If I go to Subway down the street, I used to work at a Subway when I was in high school. We never got tipped. You got paid your, what was it, like $5.25 an hour for doing your job. And that's what and you got the perk of a free sandwich. You got to make a sandwich for your lunch. And so you got to save money there. But now you go and they do that same job and they don't even do a good job. They skimp out on everything. And then the lowest percentage point is 20%. It's 20, 25, and 30. And it's like, for doing your job, you want me, so I just paid $15 for a subpar sandwich. And now I have to spend another $4 or $5. And it's getting to the point of absurdity. But that is now the new normal. And if you don't tip, what's the argument that we hear? Well, you can't afford to go eat out. Well, no. Well, we can afford to go eat out, but that's a different story. And now tariffs have played a part. But, tipping is for exceptional service, not as a standard. Why not just add that into the price at this point? It's insane.
Yeah. No, it's amazing. The New Deal and everything else set so many things on us that we take for granted now as the norms, and yet how much government is in our lives, and yet it didn't always have to be that way. And at least Javier Milei is showing us that yes, you can actually buck this system down in Argentina, but hopefully we'll catch on here, because California sure hasn't caught on, and we'll definitely talk about some of that. But I did want to talk to you a little bit about how the Libertarian Party is doing in California, and so I guess, what are some of the exciting things the LP is doing? And let me pull up the page. So in case anybody's interested in going and checking out more too, or you're listening to Adrian and you want to find out more, it's ca.lp.org. So you can go there and find out a little bit more about it. So what are some of the exciting things going on right now with the California LP, Adrian?
Yeah, so I mean, we've been embroiled in a couple of lawsuits for a while now. So one is to try to fight the so-called California top two system right here, where you have the top two, doesn't matter what party it is, and it's usually two Democrats that are going head to head at the end. And it's do you want worse or just slightly less worse? Slightly less worse, right? So we're trying to fight that we're trying to fight that on a level, the legal level, right? So using the court system, we're obviously experiencing some pushback, and we're going to see how that one ends up. We're also currently embattled with the California Secretary of State. So they've done a number on California, and you guys will be shocked to hear this, but the Secretary of State, for all they get paid, they don't do their job. And part of their job is to purge the voter roll. So when people move, when one of the largest states in the country, for instance, loses a congressional seat because so many people move out of the state because they can't stand COVID totalitarianism, they're supposed to go through and do an assessment and audit of their rolls in every respective county, especially when it's such a drastic change. I forget what the exact number of people that moved out was, but it was definitely enough to lose a congressional seat. And they haven't done that. If you go through the report, I think in some counties they report no change, and others, like in San Francisco County, I may be getting the number right. I think they claimed that 20 people moved moved out of San Francisco or something like that. It was absurd. I mean, these numbers are absurd. I mean, they don't make sense at all. So
Adrian, they just assume they're living on the street now. That's they just moved very little, from inside the building to outside.
They moved down. They moved behind the street, right? That's what.
Yeah.
They got kicked out. And so yeah, we're fighting them on that front. We're also working with ProRep Coalition, which is a single issue coalition group. I don't think that they're based here out of California, but they're primarily doing things here in California to try to attack this issue legislatively, to see what we can do to try to balance out, what the state assembly would look like, what the state senate would look like. So that's kind of been our focal point. Then we have some internal politics that no one really cares about. But being in the Libertarian Party of California is difficult. I mean, as most of you know here, it's kind of I don't want to say a losing battle, but it's hard to be a liberty person in California. And because everyone's afraid. I mean, we kind of talked about this a little bit before the show, but I don't think any of you would be surprised that there are a lot more liberty-minded people in California than we're led to believe. Even here, I mean, I live in the Bay Area, in one of two truly purple areas in California. So Contra Costa County, Orange County being the other one that's truly purple. And so what that means, for those that don't know, split between Democrats and Republicans. And it doesn't really go one way or another. It kind of depends on the election cycle, midterms, and all of that. But there are a lot more people that are more liberty-minded, and we kind of saw that we need to capitalize it as best we can. We saw that during Trump's election, right, in November of 2024. California went way more red than anyone saw. I saw it happening, and I do predict that he's not off to a great start. He was off to a great start, and then things have deteriorated a bit. But if he has a strong presidency by the time the midterms roll around, I do suspect that California has a really good chance of going red in 2028. People have called me insane for saying that, but it is getting more and more red. I think at some point, as we'll discuss later, I'm sure, there is a breaking point. And Californians can only take it for so long. And I think we're at about that point. And Trump's election, and one of our own, Kamala Harris, getting so rebuked here in a lot of these counties that were supposed to just go to her. I mean, he still lost California, of course, but it was far closer than anyone realistically expected it to be. And depending on how things continue, if all these terrible policies keep Californians down, they will eventually get sick of it. I have to imagine. I mean, it's just logical, but people aren't always logical, so we'll see.
You know,
I just want to jump in one real quick here. You said that, you talked about this going potentially red, and it does worry me a little bit when Trump starts saying some things that we think everything's going in the right direction. The Democrats are pissing everybody off so badly, and we just saw this in Canada where we thought they were essentially going to go red, and then Trump scared them back to blue again. It's one
of those beautiful things about predicting the future, right? So I get to always ask that misnomer at the end of "we'll see," because if I'm right, everyone will remember that and think, "Oh my God, Adrian was a genius." If it doesn't happen, then I can say, "Well, I said we'll see." Trump has a habit of saying something a little silly or foolish when it matters the most. Sometimes he doubles down when he shouldn't, and Canada's a great example. But I really don't. It's going to be interesting, but I do think that I'm seeing. I mean, a lot more people. I saw Trump signs everywhere in the East Bay. I don't leave the house very often, but I saw Trump signs, Trump and Vance signs in the Bay Area, and they weren't vandalized, they weren't torn down, they weren't. And I saw them like in front of. There are all these houses that I drive by every once in a while that have huge like trans flags and LGBTQ, and we support this, and they had them right outside their fence. And that was kind of wild to me that people are starting to kind of realize, well, you can hold these social positions and stuff, but when it comes to your money and your livelihood and it's ruining everything for you, and you're seeing the value of your house plummet and your gas prices going up and everything, property tax going up, it starts raising some questions for you. So I do have high hopes, but again, we'll see. That's the caveat that I'll throw there.
But Adrian, I accept your logic in all of this, because at some point in time, the voters will get to a tipping point. But for California to go red by 2028, the odds of that, I think, are quite low. But I mean, like you said, we'll see. But do you really think, do you honestly believe that that's a realistic possibility, though?
I think it really depends on what Trump does. So Trump's first couple months in office were fantastic. I mean, he gave a full pardon and freed Ross Ulbright. He gave not a pardon, but I forget that I'm slipping on the name.
Clemency.
He commuted Julian Assange.
Yes.
His sentence. He started the works to abolish the Department of Education. Immigration, of course, being a big thing that I know libertarians are split about, but Californians not so much. And pushing all these things that he promised through. And now he has this big, beautiful bill that's really not, it's big. I don't know if beautiful is the right word, but it's big and it's something, but I don't know if it's beautiful. And so, now Elon Musk is, they're, lover spat right now and the tariffs. So he's his own worst enemy. I mean, if his it's kind of like a fight or like a sporting event or something, you kind of just wish that like at 3 months that was just the end of the presidency. Like, oh, you've done great, man. Just like throw in, you're good. Let's call it right now. It's like
retire right now. Yes.
I'm a huge Manchester United fan. I have some of the signed autographs there from Ronaldo and Sir Alex Ferguson. So anytime United scores, I'm like, you know what? 10 minutes. That was a good match. Let's end it right now because it can only get worse. And that's what's happening. So it's really going to be up to him. I mean, if he can still claw it back. People do have short memories, as we've learned. So it just kind of depends. If he kind of realizes the error of his ways and he has a come to Jesus moment to a certain extent, it's possible that it can happen, but it's really going to be contingent on how the rest of his presidency plays out. I think that's going to be if people see change in a positive direction, not necessarily here in California, but across the country, and they're starting to see it in their paychecks, they're starting to see it when they file their taxes. Then I think so. But that's a huge if, because Trump is such a wild card. You think that you have the guy figured out, and then he goes, oh, you think you have me figured out? Wild card, and then he does some crazy thing. And so that's what it's going to be contingent on. I think it's going to be how happy are people with a Republican controlled government. And is that something that you want to try here in California? Do we want to go back to the Reagan days, so to speak? So we'll see. Then that's really what it's contingent on. So I'm somewhat hopeful that he can turn things around that will make people realize that it could be a little bit better. It's not going to be perfect, but I'll take a little bit better at this point in time because everything is killing us here.
It is.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope that you are right, that California ends up red in 28. I have my doubts about it, but I really do hope you're right.
You're here first. And if I'm wrong, it was expected.
Yeah, he'll be our Peter Schiff of predicting the great turnover of California. Just keep predicting it. Eventually, you'll be right.
yes.
I'll take it.
Trump is famous for saying some lunatic things, and the Canadian election, the outcome of it was surprising, and it really turned essentially at the last minute on whatever nonsense Trump said. He's very famous for doing that, even though most of his policies I kind of like, but he really could interject these wild cards into elections, and who knows what could happen in 22. Well, we have 26 coming next year, midterm elections, and then 28 we have the presidential election. So who knows? We'll have to wait and see. We'll see.
Yeah, we are seeing a bit of a conservative shift. Canada aside, it seems that people are kind of ready, even if they're not winning right now, they may in the future. And I mean, my favorite joke. So I'm Catholic myself, and when Pope Leo XIV was announced as the first American Pope, the best joke I think I saw on Twitter, or X, I still call it Twitter, but my favorite joke was Trump's tariffs have made it so now we're growing American popes. That's where we're at now.
I heard it was the Vatican's way of avoiding the tariffs.
Either way, Trump played a huge role there, right? And that is a shift. That is a shift from a very what was seen as a liberal pontiff to more of something in the past, right? So a little bit conservative for a little bit. So the fact that that's how the church decided to go, and more people seemingly want to do that kind of stuff, and they see how the progressive era has failed. I mean, you can't really name any conservative victories. I mean, you'd be hard pressed to name 3 conservative victories for the entire 20th century, let alone the 21st century. So I think people are kind of hungry for that now, and that tipping point may have been reached, and it has to be reached soon, realistically, because there's not going to be much of a tip left if we keep going on this way. So
it's true, very true.
Yeah. Let me just break in right now to convenient time to say, if you're watching us on public access, you're going to have to watch the rest of the show online. We got a lot of great stuff to talk about California, including those refineries potentially leaving and your gas prices going up. So definitely tune in for that.
More predictions from me that you're going to want to be here. You're going to see it first. I'm the Mexican Peter Schiff. I'm coining that. That is mine now. Like the state, I'm taking it from Jason.
There you go. Well, we are talking way too much about the Republican Party here. This is supposed to be a libertarian show. So I want to ask you a question about the Libertarian Party. And, we just had sort of a changing of the guard recently at our, national level in the Libertarian Party. And so one of the things you recently were elected as a at-large. And so I figure you probably have your ear to the ground on all this. But is there a big rift in the Libertarian Party, and what's it mean for the future?
Yeah, I think that there has been a big rift. So I mean, I was a member of the Mises Caucus once upon a time when it was, up and running, and promises were made, and we're going to do this and we're going to do that. It seems to have been the takeover was a bit of a failure, as I think that we've all seen, and those that haven't seen it yet or haven't just admitted it, I guess that's a different story. But it seems that the Mises Caucus stronghold on the party is kind of dissipated, and now I'm very hopeful that we're kind of moving to a more unifying area. We're just too small of a party to be, upset with each other or talking about things that don't really affect us that we can't change. I mean, anytime we talk about, let's say, LGBTQ roles in society or what that means for the culture, right? Or immigration, for instance, there are things that we all agree on that we should be focusing on and trying to push to advance liberty, ending taxation, abolishing, government departments that need not exist. And so I think that getting hopefully a little bit closer to something like that, where we can focus on the things that we agree on. The disagreements can happen over a beer, over a scotch, over cigars in a pub, and that's all fine and well. But when it comes to, and this is kind of, I mean, joking aside, one of the reasons that it's not too bad to talk about other parties and stuff is that we really should be focusing on, in my opinion, the Ron Paul vision for everything, which is single issue coalitions. There are things that we should be able to align with the Trump administration on. There are things that we should be able to align with Democrats on. I haven't found one yet as of
I was wondering where that alignment could occur. Honestly, I was.
Well, theoretically, there should be some alignment, but they've just lost their mind, right? But hopefully at some point in time, they'll get it back. And if they do, it would be great to see what are the things that we can work on, that we can push. And I really wish that libertarians were just better about this. We're so focused on the principled nature of libertarianism and this purity test of who's the better libertarian. And I mean, it's a really dumb test, because first of all, I'm the one true libertarian. But outside of that, we don't need to have that debate anymore. But kidding aside, what we need to do and focus on is the Libertarian Party has such a unique opportunity. We could decide unilaterally, maybe with a few other, so what handed Trump this last election? It was libertarians and Catholics. That's what pushed him over the edge. So he made promises to Catholics to defund Planned Parenthood and try to, he reminded everyone about abortion being, Roe v. Wade being overturned and it going back to the states and federalism and states' rights. Libertarians could decide every election. And I know that we don't like to talk about the lesser of two evils, but we also have to live in this reality where we live in a rigged system and we're forced to play. I mean, it's like I got a Monopoly board and I sat you all down and I chained you to a chair and I said, Jason, Leon, and Tim, you will play this game with me. Now, you don't get to get up and leave. You don't get to not play. You have to play. So if you play, you have to play to the best of your ability to win. And this is the role that the Libertarian Party should be playing. This is politics. It's not just a matter of principle. I know that our motto is, the party of principle, and we can still maintain those principles while still being smart and focusing on politics. I'll never forget a poll that I saw on Twitter where someone asked, I think it was Jeremy Kaufman from New Hampshire, who asked, what are libertarians the worst at? And he listed 4 things, and it was a poll that you could click on. Thomas Massey went in and replied, politics. And he blew it out. He blew out the poll. It wasn't even close. And that's something that we could be better at. We could legitimately decide every election if we just all kind of put the major philosophical and principled, quote unquote, differences aside and focused on what is the thing that is going to help advance liberty a little bit more, especially after the most unliberty period that we've ever experienced, at least in my lifetime, and I hope to never experience anything like that again. What can we do to advance it? And that's how we focus on the single issue coalitions. And it doesn't mean that you have to sell out. That doesn't mean that you have to agree with any party wholeheartedly. I mean, I'd be hard pressed to imagine that everyone here agreed on every single issue 100%. There's always room for nuance, but we have to be politically more strategic about stuff like this. And I really hope that with someone like Stephen Nikela at the helm, we can kind of curb those things and see, I understand that some of you are very principle oriented and philosophically oriented to libertarianism, but some of you are more practical. How do we make these worlds combine in a way that makes sense for us to function as a political party? We're not a political philosophy club. We have plenty of those, and I'm down with that. But we are a political party, which means that we have to advance political interests. And those interests have to align with our values, of course, but that doesn't mean that they're always going to 100% align with everything. But politics is about compromise. That's how you win.
And that is such a good point. And I've always been talking about that on this show, that it is true, the libertarians, I'm talking about capital L, the big L libertarians, okay, they claim, the Libertarian Party claim to be the party of principles. And fine, I'm fine with that. But the fact of the matter is, in order to do anything in the real world, you have to compromise with someone or somebody. It does not mean you have to give up all your principles. It does not mean you even have to agree with half of the things that the other person may be promoting. However, if they're promoting something that could advance liberty just a little bit, I don't see why we should not be able to come to the table with them and go forward advancing the cause. And this is something I've always been trying to get to. Okay, the Libertarian Party is small relative to the Republicans and the Democrats. They're relatively small. And I see no problem with us as the liberty-minded, us finding overlap and working with the more established parties to advance liberty in general. I see nothing wrong with that. But there are a lot of people, I guess, in the big L Libertarian Party that have a real problem with that concept. They really do.
And I remember when I had I had the distinct privilege and honor of hosting Bobby Kennedy Jr. here in California for convention last year. And I didn't know I was going to get a meeting with him. I was told it was going to be, I'm going to get to shake his hand and then get out. And I was like, you know what? I'm okay with shaking his hand. That's cool. That's good enough for me. And I go up there and I say, Mr. Kennedy, it's such a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much for coming. And I shake his hand. I don't even take my bag off. Right. And I'm just ready to get out. I'm like looking at a security team, like, okay, I shook his hand. Am I going to get tackled now? How does this work? And he said, he takes a seat and he says, Adrian, sit down. And I looked and they're like, well, he said sit down. So I sat down and we spoke for about 45 minutes. And this is when he was still toying with the idea of running as a libertarian. And so he said, so we talked, we kind of shot the breeze for a little bit. And then at some point, 5 minutes into our conversation where we're just, shooting the breeze, he says, so let's get down to business. So what would it take what would it take for me to win the Libertarian nomination? And I talked about the technical things, if you were to do it. He hadn't decided at this point yet, if you were to do it. And at some point, I said, there's two things, sir. So first, you have to come to more conventions like this. We're the biggest delegate. You have to be able to speak to the delegates that are going to be at national. I explained the technical aspects, the boring aspects of the LP and how we work. And then I just stopped talking. And I was hoping that he would forget. And then he said, well, you said two things. What's the second one? And I said, well, sir, with all due respect, you're going to have to get really libertarian really fast. And then he laughed. And then he said, well, I think I'm a libertarian. He explained some of the things that he was liberty minded. And I said, those are all fair points, sir. But also there are these things that are problematic. I think he just made the Gaza post or something like 2 weeks before then. And he's like, well, I said, I understand that there's nuance, sir, and all this stuff. But that he would have been a great ally to have. And we did have him for a little bit. And there's still some of that allegiance there, not allegiance, kind of like that. That conversation is still taking place, right? So that it would be good for us to understand that if we can get into the ear of these really important people and talk to them and push these policies, which is why I've been asked point blank, if I ever had the opportunity to work in an administration under one of these people, to serve with a Thomas Massey or a Rand Paul or a Mike Lee, they're Republicans and we're not going to agree on everything, but it doesn't matter, because if I could do something, who knows if I'm going to be the lone guy that's sitting at that table and I say something that gets their attention and they're like, well, tell me more about that. I don't know what you're talking about. And if that's really the only way to influence these kind of things and keep these conversations going. But sometimes the joke that I've made in the past is, libertarians are infamously autistic, and that's the thing that Leon was asking about when he said, why can't we do these things? And I think part of it is autism. And I joke that all it took was for Bobby Kennedy to go to two libertarian conventions, and now he wants to eradicate autism. Right? That's all it took for him to eradicate autism, and we took this in the front. But there is something to that where we have to get out of, whether it's just that we're very passionate principally or severely autistic. We need to let the people that want to advance liberty in a political world, which is the world that we live in. Aristotle talks about this. Everything is politics, and we have to maneuver it in a way that makes sense. Without compromise, we have nothing. You're never going to get everything that you want, but if you can get some of what you want,
yes,
that's a good starting point. You see all the Lego sets behind me. I have boxes of those in my closet. I buy them faster than I can build them. And the compromise I made with my girlfriend is I will buy those, and I will make room somehow and give you closet space, right? That was the compromise. And so I can buy more, right? I can't have it both ways.
Yeah.
Well, what I took though, mainly from your story though, when you talked about Bobby Kennedy, and this is that, a lot of times there's things that libertarians, maybe it's our autistic nature or whatever, but we tend to know a lot of things about maybe a little bit more about the real world economics than a lot of the people in these other parties, which Javier Milei is demonstrating to the world right now in Argentina. All the people who said he was going to fail, and they're having to back off and say, wow, this stuff is working. You know what? They had a housing shortage, and he just ended rent control, and suddenly the housing shortage ended and the prices went down. It's like, how does that happen? They couldn't understand it.
Their minds blew. Their minds blew. You're exactly right. They didn't know how. They were literally asking, how did this happen? And he's like, well, let me talk to you about Mises.
Yes.
But that's the main thing. If we can have the conversation, there's a chance we can actually get some of these ideas across them. If we can't even have the conversation with them, then there's no chance at all. So
right, you want to be the people in the room that can kind of help direct that conversation in the right way. And it's there isn't enough credit given to those people. And again, we focus more on the negative than we do on the positive. And we have to we're libertarians. We don't have very many wins. We've got to focus more on the positive and the small wins that we do have and that are actually achievable. But this is also just a problem within the party. And I see this here in California all the time. If I had to, as of today, June 4th, right? June 4th, 2025, I have probably gotten just under 20 emails from random people telling me that they want to be the nominee, they want to be the gubernatorial candidate for the LP. I don't know who these people are. Sometimes they vary from I'm 21 years old and I understand life to I'm 95 years old and I definitely understand life and I've done this and all this stuff. And I don't know who they are. I don't even know if they're party members half the time. And they give a nice little spiel over email. Sometimes they're legitimately insane. Other times they do mean well. And I try to tell them, what county do you live in? Well, I live here. Well, there are a lot of local places that you could affect change. You want to affect change? There's zoning board openings in your local, like in your county or in your town. There's water board, all this stuff that could make an actual difference in your community. But no, they want the big boy chair. And they have these delusions of grandeur. And, well, I can at least promote. And I said, well, that's not going to really move hearts and minds. In order for it to be, especially for California, we have to have someone that's notable, that's personable, that can do all these things. And I'm sorry, sir, but you're not it. But if you want a spot right now, there is an opening that's been vacant for 2 years on this board. And if you want to make your way up the pecking, there's a pecking order. If you want to make your way up the ladder, you've got to start small. But no one ever wants these, what I call unsexy positions. They want congressmen, and that's what they want to run for, so they can say, well, Jason, back in 2013 I ran for Congress for this district in California. And it's like, no one cares. At the end of the day, no one's going to care. But you could say, hey, Jason, in 2013 I held this water board position in my town of Watsonville for 3 years, and I was able to move up. Then I ran for this, then I went for this, and I eventually got to city council. And then I realized that was enough government for me, and I got to meet some cool people and do some neat things. And I have some experience in this area, and I can kind of pass that along. But
and maybe by getting a few liberty ideas at that level, they actually saved them some money by not buying all in on some of these horrible leftist ideas that are going on out there.
And sometimes it takes a long time. I mean, Aaron Starr is a city councilman in Oxnard. He just got elected. I don't know if any of you know who Aaron Starr is, but he's our highest ranking libertarian now in California. And anyone want to take a wild stab in the dark as to how many times it took, how many runs he had to get through to get elected?
I have no idea.
6.
Oh, wow.
He learned from every campaign, and he made new mistakes along the way. And then he finally hit the, whatever you want to call, like the perfect hat trick at the end. And he beat the incumbent by almost, I think it was over 100% of the votes. I think he got twice as many, a little bit more than twice as many votes than the incumbent. And he did it by going around and working his butt off, knocking on every door, saying, this is what I want to do for you. This is what I'm going to fight for. He's sued the city of Oxnard many times to get taxpayers refunds on government theft, all this other stuff that he's done. He's been doing good work down there for years and made a name for himself. Now he's a city councilman, and I don't know what else the future has in store for him, but no one's willing to put in that kind of effort. The problem with the philosophical aspect of even the big L libertarians is that they love the philosophy. They can talk about it all day long, and they will talk your ear off over drinks, over a cigar, whatever. But when you say, oh, that sounds really great, well, I think we should do this. Oh, well, no. I'm just the idea guy. I'm not going to do like the work. That's something for Tim or for Leon. That's fine. But like, I'm just the idea guy. And they never want to put forth the effort. So that becomes the problem. Then someone comes along and says, well, I have this idea. It's a little bit different than yours, and I'm willing to put in the effort. Well, no, now you're not a real libertarian because you don't 100% agree with what I want to do. And this is the kind of stuff that we have to get away from if we're going to be successful and effective.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you suggest that we should be in the room and be the libertarian or liberty-minded, economic-minded person there, wouldn't we be better off with aligning or becoming a part of one of the major parties, Republican or Democrat, in order to be in that room? It's really hard to get in the room when you're not elected or not a part of somebody that's elected. So I don't know.
Kind of like Rand Paul and Thomas Massey. They almost seem like undercover libertarians.
No, that's a great question. I mean, for some people, and it's one of those things where I will show my libertarian colors here. It's kind of a to each their own sort of a thing. I mean, it worked very well for Rand Paul. It worked very well for Ron Paul. Everyone kind of forgets that he ran for president in 1988, right? Mm-hmm. And then he ran. I think before then he ran for Congress under the LP ticket. And then he said, well, this isn't the way for me. And then when did he get elected to Congress? When he changed his L to an R. And it worked out really well for him. He was known as Dr. No on the floor. And then he gave empowered speeches, and we all revere him as probably the greatest politician, the greatest congressman in our lifetime, probably the greatest congressman that's ever lived, that's done some really great things and really moved the needle. I mean, the Giuliani moment was precious. I mean, just embarrassing a whole panel of Republicans. So for some, it probably is the way, but for some others, as a minority, I can say that the minority token, the whole minority token thing kind of works sometimes. And if you have, you might want to be the Republican that says, well, I have a libertarian that works for me or that's here. And so I need your vote. So maybe they have a political agenda in that case. And at some levels, it might make sense to say, well, I have a libertarian on staff and he talks to me about your guys' issues and the stuff that you guys, economics and all that stuff that I don't understand, all that gobbledygook. So just so you know. So it kind of depends on the office, but I think that they're valid strategies. Justin Amash has done this several times. He's gone back and forth between Republican and Libertarian, and I think that's a perfectly valid strategy. Notice how none of them ever go Democrat, and it's because there's really nothing that, especially when it comes to economics, it's almost like you're speaking a foreign language to them.
Yes.
That they'll understand. At least Republicans they're not fluent, but they get the gist.
Yes.
As they can.
And you see, but
until you start talking tariffs.
Even if you're talking tariffs, I mean, you could at least explain, what is the potential harm of having tariffs on our society. I mean, you could explain these things and do it in a manner that the average person can understand. So even having the tariffs is not a bad thing. The point I was trying to make, and I think Adrian, I so agree with you, is that we have to find overlap. Where do we find this overlap? Now, I don't think we could find it with the Democrats, quite frankly. I really don't think. But look, for instance, in the Republican Party, there's the Republican Liberty Caucus that I think we could find a lot of overlap there. And we could work with them on certain issues. Maybe we could go issue by issue, as you rightfully said, and probably try to promote some cause that promotes liberty in general. So I really would hope that Adrian, being the head of the Libertarian Party here in California, that's correct? Is that correct?
Yeah, okay. I do what I can here. And I think, Aristotle I always try to remind for all the philosophically inclined libertarians, which there are many, Aristotle talks about this in the Metaphysics, and he says, you cannot proceed with a discussion or an argument unless you agree on first principles, right? You have to agree on the premise, or you can't even get into the minutia of the argument. So if the premise with liberty Republicans, the so-called liberty Republicans, or any Republican is, do you want to advance liberty? Because I do. And they say yes. Okay, so we agree on that premise. So now it's, how do we advance it? And there might be discussion and disagreement there. But the problem with Democrats is, and I'm in the Bay Area, I have a lot of friends that are progressive or Democrat. Oh, they're more acquaintances now. They're not huge fans of mine. But, you start off that conversation with, do you want to advance liberty? And it says, well, at the expense of, okay, well, we don't agree on first principles, clearly, because you just started it with, but, well, and then enter Margaret Thatcher quote, but the opposite, right? And it becomes, well, but for your safety, I mean, what do you mean? And it's like, okay, so you don't understand that. Now I have to explain the first principle. We're not going anywhere. We're hopefully with Liberty Republicans, we're more liberty-minded people, whether they have a small L, a big L, whatever next to their name. You can say, we want to advance liberty. Yes. Okay, now how do we go about that? And then the discussion can unfold. But with Democrats these days, you'd be hard pressed to find that, which is really ironic because Trump is basically an 80s Democrat. And that's how far the Democrats have fallen, that they've just kind of lost their minds in a lot of respects.
And lost Joe Rogan at the same point, in the same way. But I did want to say, though, just to make sure that we move on to some of the other topics, I did want to say, if you guys have been excited about hearing about all this party stuff and say, hey, I want to give the Libertarian Party a try, they are having a convention in about a month or so. And let me pull this up. So here we go. So this is, you can find this on their webpage. And did you want to tell us just a little bit about what the convention is going to be about before we start talking about some of the damage that can happen in the state of California if we don't leave these progressive policies behind and join the Libertarian Party?
So let's start with the damage that can happen at convention. Well, the convention itself, I don't want to lie to anybody. It is mostly business. So leaders are elected and all this other stuff. So if you want to help elect leaders at the Libertarian Convention, that would be the time to go. We go over bylaws and things that are not of consequence to the greater liberty movement, but it does help define the scope of the party for years to come. The big thing would be if you scroll down to the bottom, I believe our featured speakers are there. And that's really where the fun is at. And we have, I think I put him on the bottom, pretty sure.
Oh, there we
go. Yeah. So we have Chris Rufer, who is our biggest donor here in California and for LP National. He's a philanthropist. He has a lot of nonprofit organizations and he generously donates his time. We're actually going to be at his hotel for this convention. He's generously donated the use of his property for this in Santanella. We have Spike Cohen, who is the VP, the LP VP candidate for 2020 with Joe Jorgensen. He's always a great speaker. Now he has a nonprofit, You Are the Power, where he goes around and helps people in their local communities. Larry Sharp, who's always been great, knows a lot about ballot access. He's from New York, has run for governor and all that. Our new chair, LNC chair, Stephen Nikela. I kind of joked about him, but he doesn't give me a straight answer. He always has these pictures everywhere, I'm convinced that he has a professional photographer that follows him. I'm the most unphotogenic person ever, and he's not even a looker. But he takes all these great pictures. Someone takes these great pictures of him, and I want to know who that is. And he still won't tell me. Mike Zyrtek, who works for one of Chris Rufer's organizations, Advocates for Self-Government, who's always great. Naomi Brockwell, I don't know that well, but I've heard that she's great. So I look forward to hearing her. Aaron Starr, who is our highest elected libertarian. Boomer Shannon, who really works with strategies and helps candidates get elected. So if you're interested in politics and kind of hitting the ground running, he'd be a good guy to have. And Lars Mapstead, who is one of our presidential candidates for this last cycle in 2024. I'm hoping to still get, so there's some TBD spots. There might be 2 more surprises coming up that would be of fun for people, but that's what you kind of want to see. You'll get to meet a lot of liberty-minded people, see how you can get involved in California, see what's going on, and keep your finger on the pulse there. So I'd encourage everyone to come out. Business is free. The speakers do cost a little bit of money, but you get good food with it, good drink, and good company.
Indeed.
Awesome.
Indeed.
Awesome. Well, and now I think it's good to shift a little bit into some of the consequences of not being liberty-minded here in California. And I tell you, one of the biggest, scariest stories we're hearing about now is, if you loved, the rolling blackouts of gray days, you're going to love paying $2 or $3 more at the pump for gas in a few years.
If we're lucky, $2 or $3 more.
Right. I mean, the refineries are kind of on their way out. Several of them have announced they're closing. And so I have a video clip that will kind of summarize the story. So let's get into that.
California's looming refinery crisis. 2 are set to close in the next year, which could send gas prices surging even higher. In Sacramento, lawmakers are scrambling to figure out a solution.
We have a crisis on our hand that may have been self-created.
This challenge is happening right now.
This is happening in real time.
State Assembly Democrats and Republicans in a rare show of unity, grilling state energy officials over what needs to be done to stabilize fuel supplies.
You think we're going to lose more refineries?
I think that's an evaluation we are carefully making. I would say the honest answer would be we are evaluating and we do not exactly know the way to measure the exit risk.
So keep in mind that Democrats have controlled California policy in California for generations, and they've had monopoly control for almost 20 years. So they pretty much own this with their policies. And these are largely self-inflicted by trying to force refinery capacity rules and a lot of emissions rules on refineries that don't exist in other states.
Phillips 66 announced in October it was closing its refineries in Wilmington and Carson, the state's 7th largest refining operation. Valero also announced they're closing a refinery in Northern California. Together, they produce almost 20% of the state's supply. The companies are citing long-term insecurity. Severin Borenstein is a professor at UC Berkeley's Haas School of Business.
If we don't get it right, and we end up with those refineries closing, and we don't have the import capacity, that could raise the price of gasoline dollars per gallon.
So what does this actually mean? It could be anywhere from $8 to $10 a gallon. It's all driven by supply and demand, essentially. And that means lack of supply.
One way to help make up for the refinery closures would be shipping in fuel by land or sea. But right now, it does not appear the state has the infrastructure in place for a massive jump in volume.
Now, the irony here is that a lot of these rules, like cap and trade, they were meant to reduce the carbon footprint. Well, if you have to import everything, or at least significantly increase your imports, that's going to raise the carbon footprint.
Professor Borenstein says oil companies may fear making long-term investments in California because of lawmakers' push for EV mandates. Governor Newsom has also been criticized over legislation targeting oil companies over their profits and supplies. Bottom line, state lawmakers are running out of time.
The state is largely without a system-wide transition plan.
Okay, so state Democrats, they seem aware that they own this crisis, one even admitting it was self-created by pushing electric vehicles too hard, too fast.
So there you go. And one of the most juicy parts of this story is you see the lawmakers are turning on the regulators. And of course, the scandal is they're all Democrats. I mean, these regulators that were put in place, they were put in place by the Democrat lawmakers, and the Democrat lawmakers trying to make, I didn't know what they were doing. I can't believe what's happening now.
There's like so much beauty in that one. I'd never seen that clip before. Like I knew there's just there was just a rare moment of self-awareness. The whole like saying the quiet part out loud when that lawmaker acknowledged that this was a self-inflicted wound. Yes. That was beautiful. I mean, that was perfect. I mean, that was such a rare moment of self-awareness. But I remember when the story first broke, which I believe was 2 months ago. I think it was a month or maybe 2 months ago.
That was the second refinery. The first refinery, I think, was kind of on the table, I thought, at the end of the year last year. It was. And then we just had the Valero one. And the crazy thing about the Valero one is I think that's one of the most modern ones. And so they're saying they can't make it.
Well, I just remember because I get all of the alerts. I don't know, maybe I'm a masochist or something, but I get alerts on my phone I do BBC, CNN, Fox News. I like to get them all because I like to play a game with myself every once in a while where the same story always breaks, right? And they have different, alerts and how they spin depending on Wall Street Journal, New York Times. And I'll never forget no one else was talking about it. New York Times, Wall Street Journal, but I got an alert from Fox that said, this state's gas prices could go up to $10. Click here to find out what state and why, right? Because they never give you the story. All the other ones give you the synopsis. And without clicking, I knew it was California, but sure enough, it was like, well, let me put, I'll take California for 2,000, Alex, right? And sure enough, I mean, it was California. And I mean, it was just everything about that clip is beautiful. I mean, there's a self-awareness, just like Jason pointed out. You have you have Democrats eating each other alive because they're realizing that they really screwed up by pushing these EV mandates and trying to force people to buy things during a time where we're still having energy crises here in California with PG&E not having it together. So you can't even, what are you going to do when we can't sustain what we have now? We still have rolling blackouts and rolling brownouts. We're probably due for one any week now here in the Bay Area. As soon as it starts getting a little bit warm, all the ACs go up, right? But let's all plug our EVs into the grid and then exacerbate the problem. So they kind of acknowledge that they messed up. But I love how no one is willing to take the blame for this. They kind of are, but not really, for political, reasons or whatever. And it becomes like, well, it's our fault, but not really. They're saying it's our fault while pointing at everybody else. And it's just really, really funny because they know that, but it's not because they care. It's because the midterms are coming up. This is scheduled to hit in October or September of this year. And you know what people are going to be really pissed about? This when it comes to midterm elections. And they know they don't want to be blamed for continued Republican control at the federal level. It's not going to happen to the state level here, but they don't want to lose to their fellow Democrats who are just going to blame other Democrats, but they don't want to be responsible for, California doesn't want to be responsible for handing over yet, another 2 terms to some of these, senators or congressmen at the federal level or whoever else is up for election coming up. It's really funny. It was a beautiful.
The only true thing that was said on that clip by these politicians, these so-called knowledgeable people who are in the know, the only true thing that they said was self-created, because it was. Yeah. I used to work for the California Energy Commission, and we used to be talking about these issues back then, especially when they brought in, you remember that special blend for California, the MTB kind of thing, whatever the hell they call it. We've been talking about these things for ages. And all of a sudden, everybody now jumping up in arms. Oh my goodness, we have a problem. You had a problem back then, you created it. We all knew that. And people like me, our careers are ruined because you're telling them about the damn nonsense they were doing. But now everybody's at a care now. Now that the refineries are finally starting to respond to the regulators, they're starting to move away from California. It's going to lower supply. And when supply is lower, if demand is not changing along with that, prices are going to go up. Now they have become self-aware. Oh my God. How you could feel sorry for these people? The only problem is that I have to live with this damn nonsense. That's the problem. And my wife and my children also have to live with this damn nonsense. But how could you feel sorry for these people? They took a gun and put it to their head, metaphorically, and pulled the trigger. That's what happened here.
Well, there's a few more facts, too, that I wanted to make you guys aware of. One also is that the state is saying, hey, we might try to operate the refineries, which, oh my God, have they not seen what happened in Venezuela?
Yeah, very wonderful.
Which is absolutely nuts. Yes. Yeah, our governor, Hugo Newsom, I guess you'd call him, or Gavin Chavez. I'm not sure which.
Don't ever do that to Hugo Chavez. That is an insult to the veteran.
But here are some of the things that came out of Newsom, just going into this year. And let me bring this visual up here. So the governor's office, they were trying to, essentially they scream that the refineries, every time the prices spike because a refinery goes down and then supply gets constrained, they scream that, it's price manipulation because there's no way to teach a Democrat about prices changing with supply and demand changes. So, when you have relative supply changes and such. So, Governor Newsom had on his thing that, they wanted to push the refineries to add capacity. That was their big solution. Well, if they keep complaining about, going down and not having enough stuff, we'll just force them to have more supply all the time.
Yeah.
So that was their thing, and they claimed that was their big solution. And then they had the nerve to claim that big oil lies about all this stuff. This was back in September, a month later. They had this. So everything was about the oil companies lying. But I did want to show you just a little bit about where the price change comes from. And this is actually about where we're at today. We're close to $5. Certainly here in Sacramento, we're right around $5. And this is a breakdown from the EIA of how much of the where the costs come from. And in California, over 20% is from taxes. So, aside from those spikes shifts from supply and demand, we're paying a lot more, and we're paying. I believe it's well over $1 more than the national average. So, and almost all of that is due to the taxes that we're paying here. So, anyways, I just wanted to throw that out there to you guys, that there's no accident that this has happened, and this has been a story that's a long time in the making.
Well, there's so much here that's really funny, because first and foremost, I'll put my libertarian conspiracy hat on. That's not really a conspiracy hat at this point. It's just the Adrian is right hat. So the funny part about this is that right now, what they're all freaking out about, they don't care about you. They don't care about me. They don't care about any of us. What they're freaking out about right now is that they're tanking Gavin Newsom's presidential run for 2028. Because if this completely just blows up, and it's going to be all of their butts on the line, because he's not going to endure. He's going to make sure that they get ousted out of office. There's always behind the scenes retribution, whatever you want, retaliation, whatever you want to call it. So that's what's really funny. That's what they're really freaking out about. They care about their jobs, and they care about, keeping Newsom happy, even though he was a big part of this. The second part is that this is super reminiscent. I was just talking about this. My plumber I had to have a plumber come out here to change out the thermocouple, because you can't get, my unit's really old and it's a whole thing. But we were talking about this, and it was really funny, as you saw one of my libertarian stickers, and he's like, "Wait, are you a libertarian?" So I had a fun conversation with him about that. But what was really funny is we were reminiscing a little bit. He was on the older side about this is perfect for what happened in the late 80s and early 90s, and what we're seeing now in terms of recycling versus garbage, right? Why did we have this huge boom in plastic in the late 80s, early 90s? Because cutting trees was murder. It was the worst thing you could possibly do. And in order to save the trees or whatever, because it's not like you can plant more, so you have to create plastic. And plastic is not biodegradable. It takes 10,000 years for plastic to deteriorate if you're lucky. That's why we have islands of garbage and plastic out and about. And this is no different between the gas and the batteries that you need to make the EV cars, right? So people somehow, and it's really funny to trip up my super progressive or liberal acquaintances with stuff with just basic facts. I tell them to look up, that these things are made from lithium and all these other minerals that it's really harmful to drill for and mine. It's terrible for the environment, way worse than anything that you could do with fossil fuels and, drilling and all of this other stuff on that side. But this is the thing that you're promoting. And as Bill Maher kind of actually not even facetiously pointed out, I think it was 2 years ago when this big push for EV started, he's like, "Oh, I think EV cars are great, but I still have my real car. It's nice to have this one for when I'm in LA and I only have to drive 50 miles to get from one end of LA to, from Burbank to wherever. But when I have to take a real big boy trip, I also have my gas car." So not only do you now have this gas car, whatever it is that it's bad for the environment or whatever, that was the reason for these restrictions and regulations, but now you're also doing double harm because you bought this EV car that's just kind of sitting there, and you're promoting the drilling of lithium and all these other minerals that it takes to create this sort of car, while also draining the power grid. So it's just a beautiful culmination of stupidity here, where again, we're trying to help you. We're doing this thing. It's almost like there's something else that's really driving and pushing this. It can't all just be incompetence, because I'm sure that Alex Epstein has written about this several times. He has I think I have it on The Moral Case for Fossil Fuels. He talks about this kind of stuff. It's a great book. If no one's read it, highly recommend that you read it, especially if you're a Californian. I believe he's a Californian. He read it as a result, or wrote it as a result of all the stuff that was happening here. But it's just the perfect culmination of stupidity meeting malice, and it goes back to that Tom Woods thing. See you, Tim. Have fun with the collection. But it's one of those funny things that it's this beautiful just culmination of stupidity. It's the Tom Woods thing, right? Like, are they evil, or are they just stupid? And the answer is just yes, because on any given day, it's both. It's very seldom one or the other, unless you're at a certain tier and you're only privy to certain things. It's just what a beautiful. Ultimately, you have to laugh or you cry. So it's a beautiful story in that sense. But we're all going to be feeling it soon. And then also, who does this affect? This affects your average worker. This affects buddies who have to go work retail jobs. And I don't have to drive. I fill up my car once every 2 months, if that, when I go run errands or do whatever. But I don't have to leave the house. This isn't really going to impact me. So I pay a few more dollars to fill up. every 2 months, give or take. But for the average person that's commuting, and most Californians, well, not most, but a good deal of us are remote workers now, and we work from home and we don't have to leave the house and do whatever. But this hurts your average hourly worker who has to drive 20 to 30 miles there and back to get to work. So they're going to really feel the pain, and it just makes California that much poorer and unsustainable.
Well, what's kind of funny too, when you mentioned Bill Maher, having two different cars, and I can't help but thinking of the average leftist as screaming to themselves when they're getting ready to drive out in front of their neighbors, to the virtue signal mobile. And I mean, that's pretty much, kind of what's happening here. And I think we saw that as people got upset with Elon Musk, even though these were great electric cars, a lot of people ditched them because suddenly it wasn't doing their virtue signal for them anymore. So,
they went out of their way. Not only that, but they went out of their way to anti-virtue, or actually, well, not anti. I guess it would just be more virtue signal, right? It was. Do you see those bumper stickers? I've seen a few out in the wild that are, I bought this before I knew who Elon Musk was, or before he was a Nazi, or whatever. And I saw some of those on Twitter, and I was like, oh, surely that's just AI or But I've seen some of those in the wild. A few bumper stickers are like, please don't key my Tesla or vandalize it. I bought it before Elon, went crazy, or whatever it was. You would go out of your way to just inform everyone. The people that are supposed to be your friends and peaceful or whatever, you have to let them know not to burn your stuff to the ground because you bought a car that a guy made and that now you're not supposed to like, or whatever. It's
yeah.
I guess when they start to like Elon again, they're going to tell you it's okay to have your car and go vote your signal with it. You have your Tesla and your electric car. You could wave to the neighbors and show what an environmental friendly person you are and all that other crap. And they start liking Elon again,
It's only a matter of time now that he's passing Trump.
Yes.
Well, it was funny, too, that when they all loved Elon, somehow they had a disconnect that shooting a Tesla out into space was actually not very carbon friendly.
Stuff is just lost on people, and it drives me mad. But the hypocrisy, I mean, all you can do is laugh. All we can sit here is laugh, because the outrage is too much. It would consume us. The anger would consume us, and it would take over our lives, because you have to laugh that all these people, all the celebrities, the pop singers, the whatever, go around on their private jets, and they do more damage in one round trip to Brazil, or however many trips they do all across the world to give their concerts or do whatever. There was a Taylor Swift stat I saw, I think, 20 million gallons of fuel or whatever a year or a month or whatever during her tour. And that's more than any of us. We wouldn't even hit, we would hit the smallest fraction of that in our entire lives driving a car, right? But we're the ones that have to give up our ability to commute and our ability to live so that she can go around, because she is giving music to the world. How dare we? Who are we to question the gift of music, right? While she goes around and spends 28, whatever it was, million gallons on fuel in her private jet, because heaven forbid, she's too famous to fly commercial. What are we thinking? What's going on? And it's just, the absurdity is just too much. And anytime you bring this stuff up, there's always some sort of just half-assed answer to why this is somehow okay for them, but not for us. We can somehow collectively make a difference. But one person that is statistically doing worse damage is somehow exempt because of their status. Isn't that supposed to be the thing that liberals are against? Which they are, unless it's them. The irony here is rich. This is Gavin Newsom at French Laundry all over again.
Exactly. And you see, this is just the point, is that these politicians and these celebrities who promote these horrible ideas, they do not have to live with the consequences. We do, okay? And it's only when it come home to them, like the fires in Los Angeles, it burned down a lot of, high-price homes and that kind of stuff. Then they start to think about, some of this stuff probably don't make sense. But when we are there suffering with the prices and all the regulations that they're promoting and their political friends are promoting, their progressive friends are promoting, they don't care. They never care. But it have to come home to them before they start to care.
I just saw, I don't know if you guys have seen them. I have the TV on, as I said, when I work sometimes. And I've just started seeing for the last, ever since the fires down in LA, where that was the first time that celebrities and politicians' homes were legitimately impacted by something like this. Usually it was just, I mean, it was little remote places in the Bay Area or down south where rich people didn't really live. But after that, I started seeing, I don't know if you guys have seen them, the PG&E propaganda is on a tour. I see ads almost every time I hear an ad from PG. There's 3 different cycles of PG&E ads about how they're doing better and they're pledging to do this and they're working and they have drones and they have a project to put all the power lines underground. It's like, it's so funny that you're doing this now. You didn't care before, but now all of a sudden all these projects you're getting off the ground. And what's changed? Oh, well, it started impacting people that are paying your, that determine where you get to operate in this monopoly that you have here in California. Mm-hmm. And so now that's a problem, right? So now we have to take it super seriously. And it's just like this with everything. I mean, the hypocrisy is it's almost too much to bear, but it's par for the course for California. This is why people don't like us. This is why anywhere you go, they say, I hear it everywhere. It doesn't matter what state I go to. I travel for the LNC a lot. I travel for work a lot. And they say, where do you live? The Bay Area. And then I roll and sigh. And I'm like, oh, and I'm not one of those. And they're like, you're all one of those. It's the equivalent of Americans traveling to Europe or any other country. Oh, you're an American? Oh, God, you're the worst.
Yes.
Terrible.
Sometimes when you're in a foreign country, you got to hide your U.S. passport, man. You really got to.
I've said multiple times, I really regret when I was a young kid not getting my Mexican citizenship. I still could, theoretically, because both my parents are from Mexico. Because if I ever go, I've never been to Europe, but if I ever go there, I don't want to travel on an American passport. I'll just speak Spanish the whole time. I don't care. I don't want people to mug me or hate me just because I exist, just because I'm an American. I'd be more than happy to just speak Spanish and pretend like I know Nintendo. Whatever.
Well, it's funny. We've been talking about, big scale stuff, and we talked about other big scale stuff on recent shows as well. The bullet train fiasco, complete mismanagement, the fires, as Adrian just brought up. I mean, one thing after another. California has shown that, you hand them over responsibility, the government, and it's just one disaster. It's a clinic in how to mismanage things. Well, this also hits everybody at the kind of local level and small scale too. And the next story we have is one about new parking fines that are hitting people. And so we have this new law that recently came into play where it's called a daylight law. And the idea behind it is not a terrible idea. There is a safety component to it that might make sense, but the way they went about it is just absolute mismanagement, again, from top to bottom. And so I'm going to play a video here so you all can see a little bit of background about what we're talking about, because it's jaw-dropping, as you'll see.
It's the new state law impacting most intersections across the city.
In this neighborhood, everyone's been hit up.
Every inch of parking matters, but now you have to make sure you have 240 of them, or 20 feet, in between your car and any crosswalk. That includes marked or unmarked, as long as you're on the approaching side, and it doesn't matter if there's a painted red curb and you're behind it.
I walk every day, like I am coming back from the market right now, and I see tickets on a lot of cars.
It didn't take long for us to see the same thing. We saw half a dozen tickets within an hour-long span alone. We also saw the parking enforcement officer giving them out. The supervisor for that unit at the San Diego Police Department told us they've given out at least 4,200 tickets for daylighting since March 1st.
So the point of the law isn't terrible. It's designed to give drivers more visibility to see pedestrians before they step out into the street. So there's actually good reason for it. But that said, the state, as usual, finds a way to screw it up. And maybe this time it's intentional, because in order to find out if you're in compliance, it's practically impossible.
We didn't have to go far at all to find cars that actually have received those tickets, so we want to show people exactly what officers are looking for. So let's look down to the sidewalk. You see that edge that's on the side closest to homes or where businesses would be? Officers draw a line from that point over to the curb, into the street, and then they measure literally 20 feet from that point. It doesn't matter whether or not the curb is red, and we're also not the only ones out here using a tape measure. Now that we're back out live, just for perspective, my tape measure right now is at 10 feet. You would need to be double this distance away from me to be okay under this new daylighting law.
Why don't they just paint the curb red the appropriate distance so that drivers know?
We came across a driver who was surprised to see their car had been ticketed overnight. She didn't want to talk on camera, but said she was frustrated that the curb wasn't painted red or there were no posted warnings. Now she has a hefty fee of more than $100 for the ticket, including fees. Originally, they were supposed to be in the $60 range.
So as you can see, it seems like it's a fundraiser. I mean, how could you pass such a horrifying law that you have to now, if you're driving in California, you better carry a tape measure around. And boy, if you're coming from out of state, how are you supposed to know this?
I mean, it's honestly perfect. I mean, you hit the nail. I mean, I have an answer to your question, but we already know the answer. The reason that they haven't painted the curbs red is twofold, right? One, it costs the city time and money to go and actually try to. So if this was really about safety, what's the infamous line from Jurassic Park? I spared no expense, right? If you're really John Heyman and you're all about doing the right thing or whatever, yeah, go out and paint the curbs red because for safety. But one, this is the only. I could be wrong about this. I'm not 100% sure on this. I knew this was true about 10 years ago, but almost in every other country, the onus, the car has the right of way, not the pedestrian, because the car is bigger and weighs however many tons. And so you should not be stupid and you should be on the lookout for these cars before they hit you, right? So the onus is always on the pedestrian, except for here. And here, the only reason that they're doing this is one, the curb, it's because it costs money. And the reason to do this, because it's absurd, right? Outside of doing the tape measure thing, there's really no way to know. You kind of have to guesstimate, but then you're also going to be that ass that maybe overestimates to be, and then you've taken up all this parking and you've maybe locked someone in or done something, whatever. But also it's to create an additional source of revenue. I mean, why do cops, if cops are all about safety in regards to speeding when you're on 880 or 80 or 580 or whatever, why do they hide behind the dividers on the freeway? Why hide? And why do you get pulled over for going 7 miles over the speed limit or 8? You're not posing a risk if you're going with traffic, but it's because you have to meet a quota and you have to generate revenue for the state, and you have to somehow justify your existence as a police officer or whatever. And it's the same thing here. And again, who does this target? Who are the people parking on the streets? They're your average people who maybe don't have a garage, or they have so much stuff because they can't afford a storage unit, so they can't park in their driveway, or they can't park, or their driveway is too narrow because at least in some places down south and in the Bay Area, you only have you only have space for one car, right, in the driveway. You don't have any space in the garage without maybe dinging your car, doing whatever. I mean, that woman that didn't want to be interviewed, she didn't look like she was a tech CEO, right? She looked like someone that works an average job that is really annoyed. She has to park on the street. It's not like she was driving a luxury BMW. So, I mean, who is this really targeting? Again, this is minorities. Minorities and poor people. And I like how in California and across the country, we have gone to great lengths. This was here in San Francisco. I think this just happened last week where they passed they're trying to pass an equity bill for kids in school, where there's a grading curve now. If you get an 80%, that's an A. And if you get a 15 or 20% on a test or whatever, that's now a D. There's no failing grade. Those don't exist anymore. This law passes in the city and county of San Francisco. And why is it? Well, the reasoning is because it affects brown and black students, right? And they're not smart enough. They're not smarter than white kids. So you have to give this curve and it's equity and this whole thing. Well, if we're going to use that same logic, let's apply it here. Who are the people that are traveling? Who are the people likeliest to have these jobs? They're going to be minorities, which are, by your definition, poor, right? So why are you doing this to them? It's terrible.
And ones that were already failing in education, so they're going to have a hard time reading that tape measure anyway.
It's true.
They whip that out to try and measure out 20 feet.
They're not going to know what 20 inches are or 20 feet.
You think they're going to be able to read a measuring tape to know what 20 feet is or whatever the distance is? You think they're going to be able to do that when they're educating them so wonderfully in our state right now? Do you think that's happened? It always boggles my mind that these people are always trying to help people like me. They're always trying. Okay, and we still end up in the same shitty position that we are in.
And it's, I mean, from the state's point of view, it's kind of brilliant because you get to virtue signal, again, to Jason's point from earlier, you get to virtue signal the things that you think are important or that people like. And then for this, it's just, well, this is just, it's for safety. And you might be right. That might have been the intent behind the bill. But again, we reach the age, as Ron Paul used to discuss, unintended consequences. Now, sometimes those are real, sometimes they're not, sometimes they're manufactured. But again, now you have the unintended consequence of, well, I would love to see the statistics. How many pedestrians have gotten hit, before this law and then after this law? Do we have some sort of, what was the purpose for this? Do we have the math or the statistics that back it up? I mean, probably not, because apparently a D is a passing grade now in California. I would be hard pressed to imagine that there are statistics that they're going to tabulate accurately to show that this is going to be worthwhile to everybody. And of course, you would pass this law and not put it up to a vote, because heaven forbid you let the people decide, right? No one would have voted for this or allowed this because they need their space. Or if the bill would have said, we propose to pass a bill for, painting all the curbsides red or whatever to increase efficiency for this new act that we want to put on January 1st or whenever it went into effect. But that's not the case, because it's not what they're trying to do. And then obviously that would be, let's assume it's going to cost like $2.5 billion to paint all the curbs red as they're supposed to be in the entire, just for San Diego, right? What it would cost. And of course, no one would vote for that. I mean, bond measures are losing, they're losing steam all across the board. We've defeated bond measures here in Contra Costa County, ironically. This is a Bay Area, and people aren't having anymore. They're kind of starting to see a correlation between, so if I give Jason more money, it doesn't make him smarter. What's going on? It's weird, right?
Well, you know what kills me about this is that they're wrong in every aspect of the story. I mean, the intended bill was supposed to be $60-something, and they're off by like almost 40%. I think it's actually more, because I think it's close to 120. Is what a lot of people say.
117 is 117.
Yeah. So, I mean, they're way off, already on their calculations. So, I mean, whoever was trying to figure this stuff out was like wrong to boot, but just from the beginning. But then to top it off, I mean, it's like you're talking about that one woman paying that fine. It would cost less than the one fine that she paid. And they already hit like over 4,000 people in the first 2 months in San Diego alone.
Yeah, yes.
And it would cost them far less just to paint that curb red than what she's going to have to pay for that one ticket.
Well, no, but here's the messed up part. You're wrong. And I'll tell you why you're wrong, because they outsource this. No, so I used to be a funeral director.
An NGO from USAID is doing the painting.
I used to be a funeral director in San Francisco. And so we had, I worked in the Mission District. And there are, so when you park the hearse in front of they're the yellow lines for loading and unloading, the white lines for, I forgot, commercial or zoning or something like that, and then the red ones. To get someone to come out to do it, so if you wanted to repaint it or to paint it or whatever, I think the minimum, depending on the length, I think the cheapest was like $1,500 or something like that to get someone to come out. And then, whatever, because it's not the city doing it. It might be city workers, but whatever the contract is so ludicrous and absurd that, of course, it's almost like the old Ron Swanson bit where he goes, there's that pothole and he gets a call. So he just goes and buys asphalt himself and does it. And it costs him all of like $30 and maybe half an hour of his day to go in, because this lady keeps calling him or calling City Hall and saying, who's going to fix this pothole? When is this going to get fixed? Who will fix the roads? And so he finally gets tired and he says, I'm going to go on lunch and do this. Realistically, it would cost us, paint costs, I don't know, like $15-20 if you go to Osh or whatever, a paintbrush, and you just go, you don't even need gloves. You just go and do it. It would cost $20 or $30 for a normal person. But of course you have to go through it's the red tape, right? To fix the red curb. Yeah. To do all this stuff. And of course, in a real world, so you're living in what I like to call a common sense reality, which is just not one that exists. Yeah. Yes, in a real world,
not in California anyway.
With $117, you should theoretically be able to paint. One paint can's got to like run. You've got to be able to paint a few dozen curbs, I would imagine. But no, you're living in common sense world. We're in California. We don't live in common sense world. You got to outsource that to city contractors, who then outsource that to whoever, and then all these fees pile up, and you're talking about thousands of dollars to paint one curb. And I guarantee that if a bill went out, it would say it would cost $2.5 to $3 billion. That would be, put in property tax or in gas, whatever the gas tax is or whatever. In order
and you'd have to study equity on it and everything else.
Right. How is it going to impact? Right. How does the red paint? Are there any Spaniards that live here that will get triggered by red paint, just like the bulls in Pamplona? What's the deal? What's going on here? And then those studies, of course, cost, we can't be cavalier about that. Those are hundreds of thousands of dollars in expenses. It was
and some of these curbs could be very old, and now you're changing the curbs. So you got to have the Historic Society come in.
Well, I think I saw. I didn't. It was like I forgot what, Daily Caller or something had a funny article. I didn't read the whole thing because it's like behind a paywall. But it was the Democrats spent $20 million on a study to see what would attract young men to the party.
Right. Yes.
And it was hot women. Like.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mind blown.
And you should look at the woman. You should look at the woman they have leading that effort. Okay.
It looks like the sister of Gorlock the Destroyer, for anybody who's in the
I mean, I wish I had built Jabba's barge, because that would be fitting. But I mean, the whole thing is just like, but I want to go to, and this is why I kind of want one of these jobs for one of these other political parties. I'd love to. I wish the Libertarian Party had that kind of money. I would love to go to the DNC and pitch like, hey guys, listen, you're having trouble recruiting young men. I will take those $20 million and I will have a report by tomorrow.
Yes.
With evidence. I will have that report. It's just going to say, you need hot chicks, and then submit it. And they're going to go, oh my God, it's brilliant. We have never heard that before. And rock all you want, but I'm $20 million richer if I'd been the one that did it. And I would have taken.
Yeah, but you know how they'd screw it up? They'd do it with like, what'll attract hot chicks? Bud Light.
No, but actually, no, you're right. What I should have said, actually, the report would say you need hot women, because then I would have the opportunity to do a follow-up report, because they would ask, well, what is a woman?
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Then I would get a chance to do a follow-up report on that. That's another $20 million in the bank. I can retire on that.
Yeah, there's no amount of study that's beyond somebody else's ability to pay.
That's right. That's true.
And it's amazing. This is the kind of stuff that's just, it's so absurd. And again, I mean, you all have jobs, you all have families, you all have disposable income and, savings and all that kind of stuff. We all have to be smart with our money, because it's our money, and there's a finite amount of money. Like Jason was talking about earlier, there's a finite amount of money that we have.
Not according to Democrat.
Well, not according to
Democrat. As much as you want.
But the state has an abundance of money, because when they run out, they do one of two things. They steal it from us, or they print more.
Of course.
And so they get to do whatever they want. So $20 million is a number. Like, if you had to actually fathom, it's really funny when I talk about the debt with people. We're at, what is it, 37 trillion now? $37 trillion in debt. We literally cannot. I'd have to sit here. It would probably take me a day to fathom what that means. Like, what would that mean if I did it in hundreds? Would that fill the square footage of my home times how much? Like, we can't actually visualize that amount of wealth, because it doesn't exist. We were never meant to visualize that kind of wealth. And we don't think about it as a, they see it as how many times has the government failed an audit or whatever? And it's just like, oh, it was a rounding error. Oh, 4.5 billion just went missing. If I have like $45 missing from my checking account, I'm combing through every transaction and wondering where that went wrong, right? Yeah. They just attribute it to a rounding error, and it's fine. And this is
and this isn't a joke either. I mean, for anyone who lives in California, the bullet train, where'd all the money go? The homelessness problem, where'd all the money go? I mean, they showed the woman who's managing that in LA, and it looks like it went to all the pearl necklaces she wears around her neck all the time. They're about this thick in pearls, you know what I mean?
They probably paid someone to go, like, those were fresh pearls. I'm sure they went to go find them and dye them in real time. I mean, no one realizes the level of corruption that's being had at every level. And this is just, again, California is one of the worst, but this is just California. So imagine here, but then look at the federal government, look at other, I mean, it's, and you don't even have to look at the state of California. Just look at your city or your town. And I guarantee that you're going to find some stuff that if you actually went through the budget that they're required to post for their quarterly town council meetings or whatever, monthly, whatever, however, every county or every town or city is different. You're going to find anomalies in there, and you're going to do the math and wonder, how do you spend however many billions of dollars or millions of dollars on something so stupid that I could just do right now if I had to for a fraction of the cost? But that's not the name of the game. It's literally it's the contractor model, and not to offend any contractors out there, but it's a contractor model of, I'm going to build a house. You gave me, Leon gave me $100,000 to build this house, and I'm going to spend $10,000 using the worst materials possible. I just have to make it stand long enough to sell, and I get to keep the $90,000. Yeah. But this is what for a private business, that's fine, because you can go somewhere else. When the house falls apart, you get to sue them, and then you can say, well, that was a really crappy house. I'm going to go find someone else that knows how to build a real house and do whatever. With the government, there's no suing the government. You never win, because the government always decides what the government did wrong. How beautiful of a system is that? It's perfect. It's perfect.
And even if the government, I was just going to say, even if the government is found wrong in court, they're going to pay it off with more money from your wallet.
Right. Exactly. So either way, we get screwed. Either way.
And this is why I've almost had a gun drawn on me here in my hometown, and the town that I live, as I'm probably the darkest person here. I've been out jogging and almost had a gun. And I told the police chief straight up, I could make this a thing. Like, I don't want to get into who I am or what I could do to make your life miserable, but I'm just telling you from one man to another, I don't want to play the race card and make your life a living hell or that officer's life a living hell. Because at the end of the day, if I sue you, you're just taking my money to give me my money back and then other people's money. And I don't believe in that. If it was really egregious, maybe I'd gotten shot and I had some medical bills, then yeah, maybe, that's on you or whatever. But this is why, why won't we pass a law to take it out of the pensions, which is also our money, right? But it also affects them in some way to kind of have this kind of corrective behavior. We can't talk about that because it gets into really ugly and dangerous territory, right? But it's absurd that this is where we're at. And I hate seeing stuff like this, but this is it's a perfect system that the state has, where when you sue them, even if you win, assuming that you do win, because the state decides if the state is right. How perfect is that? When you go fight even a traffic ticket, the judge is appointed it's a state appointed judge generally, right? You're asking them to decide. It would be like Leon and I having an argument and the judge is his wife. And it's like, and then what? How is this justice? What happens here? I'm sure your wife is lovely, Leon, but I don't trust her rendering a verdict between the two of us. I have to assume that she loves you more than she likes me. I mean, my God.
I think you've just sold Leon on the state if his wife gets to be the judge.
I'm telling you, for sure.
I see. He was about to say, I get it now.
Well, what I think the point you made, though, about going to the lower level and seeing that this even happens at your local level, and the real libertarian solution is there is no other solution other than reduce the size scope of government, keep it as simple and transparent as possible, and then if government's not there, it can't do any harm. Right? Yeah. So I mean that's part of it, right? The more you leave to the market, the probably the better it's going to be. And speaking of which, our show has gotten a little long, so I'm gonna have to reduce it just a little bit because we had a progressive fine story, and I wish I could do this in real life, but I'm gonna toss the progressive fines and we'll address that in another show. But I did want to hit
a lot. This has happened in the past. I apologize. I go on tangents and then I hate the state. So that's how much I hate the state.
Hey, no, this has been great discussion. And
really, it has been, Trump, for sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
if people tune in and see libertarians laughing, maybe they'll get a little less mad and laugh along with us. No, but I did want to bring up this last story, and it's our Knucklehead Noise Patrol to round things out because it's connected to something that you talked about earlier. It's your buddy RFK Jr. And so recently, we had just a few weeks ago, they had decided to take the let's see if I can pull the story up. Here we go. So they had decided that they're going to drop the COVID recommendations on the vaccines for healthy kids and pregnant women, which is huge because we just went through all of the science telling us all of this stuff that we needed to do, and you can't question it and just take it and be a good citizen and all that. Well, anyways, they have sort of taken a stand, and it's not that they're not still going to spend your government money on this, but they're just kind of making a stand that they're not going to force you to take it. So I wanted to... Yeah, so I wanted to show the video here, and also to part of the circus around vaccines and the whole nomination of RFK Jr. as well. So let's show you the video that we have on that.
As of today, the COVID vaccine for healthy children and healthy pregnant women has been removed from the CDC recommended immunization schedule. Last year, the Biden administration urged healthy children to get yet another COVID shot despite the lack of any clinical data to support the repeat booster strategy in children.
That ends today. It's common sense and it's good science.
There's no evidence healthy kids need it today, and most countries have stopped recommending it for children.
So it's great news that under Kennedy, the FDA will be giving parents more choice on COVID vaccines with their kids. But remember, it was just a few years ago under the Biden administration that the FDA was actually trying to hide the development data of the COVID vaccines, while at the same time trying to force those vaccines on kids. And remember, it was just a few months ago that Kennedy had to go through a circus on the confirmation in the Senate. Let's take a look at that.
You have started a group called the Children's Health Defense. You're the originator. Right now, as I understand it, on their website, they are selling what's called onesies. These are little things, clothing for babies. One of them is titled Unvaxxed, Unafraid. Next one, and they're sold for $26 a piece, by the way. Next one is No Vax, No Problem. Can you tell us now that you will, now that you are pro-vaccine, that you're going to have your organization take these products off the market?
Senator, I have no power over that organization. I'm not part of it. I resigned from the board.
That was just a few months ago. You founded that. You certainly have power. You can make that call. Are you supportive of this?
I've had nothing to do with
leadership.
leadership.
Supportive of these onesies?
I'm supportive of vaccines.
Are you supportive of this clothing, which is militantly anti-vaccine?
Do you denounce these onesies? Sadly, this is what passes for the science in the Senate.
So anyway, I'm just curious about what your guys' thoughts are. I mean, RFK Jr., he got through. He's pushing the Maha movement, and he just did something that I think is kind of, like you said, small steps in the liberty direction, right, Adrian?
Yeah, I mean, that's all you can hope for. I mean, Bernie Sanders' theatrics aside, he is one of the best of the theatrical stuff in the Senate. It's endearing. He's a senile old man, but actually he's not senile. He knows what he's doing.
Yeah, he's not. Yeah.
It's a small.
Yeah, remember we had Biden to compare him against recently.
Biden is dead. Okay,
we're gonna grave on that equity curve. I forgot. So compared, if we're gonna do the equity curve, Bernie Sanders gets an A+ as far as dementia is concerned, or I guess Biden gets the A+. Bernie is down. But I mean, yeah, it's these small steps. I mean, we all knew. The funny thing about this is that the government is in a really tight spot. Because what they have to do is they have to roll back these things as best they can without ever admitting fault. Because if you admit fault, then I'll use a really dorky, Marvel analogy, right? So like Doctor Strange in the mirror dimension, that's not real, that he creates out of thin air. Then that all collapses. It all collapses. It doesn't exist anymore. And that's a problem because if the government ever says we were wrong, Then the next time they try to do something stupid or totalitarian, then we're like, hey, remember that time? And it reminds me of those old 90s sitcoms, whether it's like Everybody Loves Raymond or King of Queens or whatever, where the husband never wants to let the wife, even though the husband is wrong, they can never admit that they were wrong. I'm sorry, it's the other way around. When the wife is wrong, she can never admit it, because and then it's the next time the husband wants to do something stupid, they have carte blanche to do it, because, hey, remember that one time in 1995 when you were wrong, when you said that this was bad or this was good, and it was the opposite. And that's kind of how the government operates here. They have to roll things back without anyone really noticing. And so unfortunately, it's one of these things where it sucks, because it is a win and we have to take it as one, but it's not really a win, because they're never going to admit, unless we get an admission of we messed up because the science never supported this, which it didn't, which is virtually what they're saying without actually saying it, means that the next time they do something like this, we don't have anything to specifically point to that says we did this wrong, therefore this next thing should be questioned. And this is kind of like it's really the catch-22 for us. So we are happy. It's kind of that bittersweet thing where we're happy that we're advancing liberty in the small way, but also it's one of those few times where it's like, but it's not enough. I would rather just add that other sentence, we were wrong. And then but you can't ever say that.
Well, the only thing I would say about this is that, yes, I want them to admit they were wrong, which of course they would never do. But I would just like a few people to go to prison over this, because what they did to us was atrocious. Seriously, we could start with Fauci. That would be good. That would be good enough for me.
That is the moderate position. Them going to prison is the moderate position, is what I hold. I can't say anything more without getting in trouble or having people in dark suits and sunglasses knock at my door. But yeah, prison is a moderate position. And honestly, I would even the bare minimum position I would take is, I am wrong, but that sets such a bad precedence for the government, because if they're wrong, it's just like parents lying to their kids about whatever. You can never tell your child that you were wrong about something, because then the next time they want to go out or they want to make the stupid decision or even a good decision, then they're going to rub it in your face and they're not going to let it go.
Yeah, true. Exactly.
They're our parent. And this is how it works. And so unfortunately, we're never going to get that I am wrong thing. And I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, even when I've been known for being cheeky at times. And when I write reports for the LNC or the LP or a press release, I still send it to editors and do whatever. And they're like, you can't say that. You got to remove that line. Like, that's not going to fly. That's not okay. So I can only imagine that when they give these kind of prompted press conferences. So it was Jay Bhattacharya on his left. I don't know who the other guy was, but I have to imagine that when they were reading this thing, it probably went through a few revisions. This is what they wanted to say. And they're like, I like it, except we're going to take out all the parts where you call the government really, really bad. And then now you can say the thing, because now it's okay. So it's kind of unfortunate for us. It is a bittersweet pill that we unfortunately have to swallow, because that's just the reality of the situation that we're living in. But it is what it is, I guess. But I mean, I'll take it. I mean, this is good. Everyone seemingly has forgotten. I always like seeing those Twitter posts every once in a while that say something to the effect of, I'll never forget, or I won't forget when we were, it's really easy to. I got reminded about this because it never affected me directly, but a buddy of mine just reminded me, I forget what the context was, but he reminded me the other day that when he lived in Castro Valley, that he had like a weird electrical engineering job where he had to work odd hours, and there was that COVID curfew where you got pulled over. If you were out past 11 p.m. or 10 p.m., you got pulled over and you had to show proof that you were allowed to be out, because, lest COVID get you at midnight, because COVID is a vampire and it comes out at certain times, like maybe not during the day, but at night and whatever. And that was a thing. People were pulled over for driving home from work, and they had to have special exemptions to do that. There was the vaccine card, which, some people faked. I might have faked it. I might have, I'm not saying I did, might have. I don't know if it's a felony or not, but so that's why I'm not saying I did. I could have, theoretically, in a world where that might have been a thing, where people had to do that to keep their jobs or to be able to get a job. I remember my first job after COVID. Well, not even after COVID, I guess it was, and we were all remote. And HR sent me a document. I was an independent contractor, and I was and they sent me a document saying, like, have you been vaccinated? And I just said, like, no. Why would, well, you need to be that in order to work. I'm like, I work from home in an office, in an office that I created for myself, like me. Like I'm never going to Ontario. Why does this matter? Well, it's a company policy. It's a company policy that I have to inject myself with something while I'm sitting here at home alone. Like, how does this affect you? Can you explain? And they had, of course, no answer. And they just kept saying it's company policy. And I'm like, well, I'm good then. And they're like, well, I guess you make a good point, without saying that, of course. And then they're like, well, it's okay. Just don't leave your office. And I'm like, well, I have to go to the bathroom. I also have to go get, you're not going to tell me what to do in my home. Like, are you insane? And it is what it is.
And it's little wonder then that some of these people who didn't question, like you, were sitting there driving around with masks in their cars by themselves.
Exactly.
I still see that. I saw that the other day because I'm in the Bay Area, and it always makes me sad for these people because I wonder, what is your life like? What is your life like? And you are still. It is 2025, and you are driving around alone in your car with a mask, and the mask, but get this is always the funniest part, the mask is like under your chin. And what is happening? Like, what is it? My favorite is still going to, I forgot where I must have been at the store. Yeah, there was like a couple, an older couple, probably late 70s, I want to say. And they were walking around with masks, but to talk to each other, they would still pull them down and like lean into each other. And I'm just like, I don't like, okay, all right, whatever.
Well, it was like the magic of the French Laundry and all the other restaurants where, people would go in, you'd wear a mask to go in, then you'd take the mask off because magically the table was surrounded by a force field.
that kept COVID out,
I'll honestly never forget. This was post-COVID. I forgot how many months ago. I was in Anaheim, and I went to, anytime I'm down south, I'm very rarely down in Southern California, but I always go to Roscoe's Chicken and Waffles. It's one of my one thing that I like to do when I'm down there because I hate Southern California. But I went to the one in Anaheim, and I wasn't wearing a mask. And the guy is like, you need to wear a mask. And I'm like, I'm not doing that. I'm not. Well, we can't see you. And I was like, and everyone that I was with were like begging me. They're like, dude, can you just like for like, I was like, how long do I have to wear? They're like, until you get seated. And I was like, all right, I'm going to wait outside and then call us when our table is ready. And then we'll see. And they're all begging me. I'm like with 5 other people. They're like, please, can you just like, we really want this. We've been waiting for so long. And I was like, all right, whatever. So I caved. I kid you not. This was something out of a Seinfeld episode. I kid you not. As I was about to just like grab it out of my pocket, he starts walking us toward the table. You walk in and it was right there to the right. It was less than 15 feet from the door that they were having people wear a mask. I never put it on. I was about to get it. I didn't even get a chance to put it out of my pocket, right? And that's how absurd it was. And what's really, really funny is, so this was, I don't know if this is a standard thing at all Roscoe's now, but you had to go to the counter to go pay. So they bring you the check and then they don't come and take the payment from you. You had to go to the counter. So I was paying the tab. And so I go and they're like, you're not wearing a mask. I was like, oh, so you're not going to take my payment because I'm not wearing a mask? Just to be clear, so I can leave. And they're like, well, pay really quickly. I was like, okay, so it's not about safety. You still want your money. And I sat there and I gave them a 30-second lecture while they were like ringing me up and doing whatever. And I was like, all right, I just want to be clear about this. But that was the level of absurdity and I know that we're never going to be able to really pinpoint. I mean, the only way this will really live on is by these stories of people like us that had to live through that when we pass this down to our kids, grandkids, whatever, because history books will never talk about the absurdity. They'll call Fauci a hero, even though he's a guy that should be probably drawn and quartered if we're to be real about it, but I'll settle for prison. Theoretically drawn and quartered, not really, but theoretically drawn and quartered.
Well, but the absurdity is so crazy that people, it's not just the COVID, right? I mean, we see it every day, even in the story that we did earlier, that the news person literally breaks out a tape measure and she's sitting there measuring this thing off. She gets to 10 feet and says, well, you're going to have to double this. Do you want that? I mean, and it's not even like her jaw is not dropping. The fact that she's not saying, what the hell are we doing? I mean, this is what a normal, level-headed person you would think would do. And the media is reporting it like, well, okay, I guess we're doing this now.
Yes, exactly.
I
they get their marching orders and they execute them to perfection because that's what they're supposed to do. And if they ever break character, that's like the worst thing that you can do. I mean, it's jaw dropping. And I truly do hope that future generations look back at stuff like this and they hear these stories. And there are still like clips out there of people that can see. But I mean, I even within the friends that were with me, they flat out told me once we left the restaurant, one of them looked over to me and said, if I hadn't been here, I would not believe this story. They were there and they said flat out, like, it was literally 10 feet. We walked in, took a few steps and then made a right. And it was the first table right there next to all these other empty tables. And she told me if I wasn't there, because I told this story after the fact, and they were like, come on, it had to be more than 50. And she's like, you don't understand. I was there. If Adrian was telling this story, I would be like you, but I was there. He is not exaggerating in the slightest. That's how absurd this whole thing was.
But the saddest thing about that whole story is that there's an awful lot of people who are with somebody and they can't believe it's happening. And the person they're with doesn't see anything wrong with it. That's the craziness of the times. But, we've gotten to just about the end of the show. So I wanted to bring up the convention again real quick and see if there's any last messages you wanted to give us about the California LP, any pitch to people to take a second look at it and, come on out and
Yeah, I mean, business is not, I'm not going to lie, business is not fun, but I have never chaired a convention sober, nor will I. And I'm entertaining, as you can see from tonight, hopefully. So come out. I make business fun as it can be, possibly. So we're going to have a good time. There'll be good guest speakers there. You'll get to meet a lot of like-minded people. If you're a Californian who thinks that they're insane because they want more liberty, or they find stories like the ones that were premiered tonight to be absolutely absurd, and all of your Democratic, progressive friends, even Republican friends, don't see anything wrong with what happened today, or what we saw today with tonight, I guess it's tonight now, with these stories, come out and meet some like-minded people. You'll get into some spirited debate. You'll have some good drink, smoke if that's your thing, and you can kind of get into the weeds. And there are very few places that you'll get this many libertarians in one place, for better or for worse. So you'll get to kind of pick their brains. You'll get to be around like-minded liberty people. So definitely come out. If business isn't your thing, you can walk in and out. It's free. The talks do cost money, but I'll be around. You can come and say hi. I'm always happy to talk to people, share a drink, and talk your ear off and tell you what I think about certain things. I'll tell you what I really think about Jason and Leon. So come out. I have stories.
Well, I got to say, this has been a lot of fun, and we way overspent on time as though we were spending government money, except that I feel like we actually got some value out of it.
I'll send you the bill. I'll send you the bill and we'll see. We'll see if you think that then. At least $117 in a ticket. I will send it to you. Don't worry about it.
There you go. Yeah. But I tell you, if you're watching this and you're not sure what you can do, think about what you can do in your own community, because this is the thing, right? I mean, they're coming for your liberty. We see it every day. We see it in the crazy laws that are passing, both local, state levels, all around the country, especially here in California. But if we're going to preserve our liberty, everybody's got to take a stand. So, figure out what you can do in your community, and, maybe join your local Libertarian Party. That might be a first step. But thanks so much, though, for joining us. And until next time, stay tuned and stay free.
Oh, yes, indeed.
Thanks, guys.
Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, always and forever.
Thank you for listening to the Knuckleheads of Liberty podcast. Find us on Facebook, Rumble, YouTube, your favorite podcast network, and at knuckleheadsofliberty.com.